Way back last century, I joined America Online. I had to come up with a password, something uniquely mine. I picked the word lightning, I have no idea why. Lightning's gonna be my password until the day I die. Remember that pride you felt the first time you had a password, became a citizen of cyberspace?
Boy, I do remember the first time I had a password. I have one of the oldest AOL accounts out there. Anyway, I couldn't resist, and I hope you enjoyed Christine's song. Let's get started. Welcome to a very important discussion about simply passwords and their importance and how to design passwords that are going to be difficult to guess, but easy for you to remember. We're also going to be talking about the United States Census scams, and I apologize to all of you Canadians on this webinar because I don't think you're having the census this year, but a lot of the same principles will apply to you, and I'm sure some of the same scams will be around when Canada finally does their census. I'm very excited to be back here with all of you cyber seniors. And for all of you that do not know me or you're new to these cybersecurity sessions, I'm Robin Saunders, and I'm the Director of the Graduate Programs in Communications and Information Management at Bay Path University, and I also teach in the Cybersecurity program at Norwich University. Cybersecurity is my passion, and I manage two websites, cybersafesenior.com, which is designed to provide educational information and educational resources for seniors and baby boomers concerning cybersecurity issues, and a second website, dearrobin.com, where you can actually write in and ask me specific questions that you have about cybersecurity. So anyway, let's get on to simply passwords. Many of you have passwords, and actually I know you have passwords because you have to have created them to even get into places like cybersenior.org. But it is very easy for people who want to know your passwords to get that information. One of the ways that people get passwords is something called social engineering. And here are a few examples of what you do not want to happen to you.
So the most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on a Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay.
But,
Have you had this cat for a while?
yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password.
We are talking to people about the cybersecurity breach at Equifax, and in light of that, we're asking people how secure their internet passwords are. What do you use for an internet password?
I usually stick to my last name. That's probably not the best thing to do, but I usually stick to my last name, a few digits, maybe like a hashtag or something, or
How do you spell your last name?
Walker.
Walker?
Yeah.
Walker?
Yeah.
And then just a few numbers?
Yeah. I probably should have told you that.
And then a hashtag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The numbers, like, what do you use? Like your birthday or something? Your area code?
Yeah. Usually like my birthday.
How old are you?
21.
21? What day you born?
November. No, the 29th.
29th of November?
Yeah.
So Walker, 11/29/95.
Woo! I probably shouldn't say that, but.
That's okay.
Yeah.
How strong is your internet password?
Strong.
What sort of things do you use?
Capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, characters, everything.
What's a current password you're using?
I don't really want to tell the current password that I'm using, to be honest.
You think I'm a hacker?
Not necessarily. Well, I mean, I guess, like 63XJ9 hat symbol, at symbol, basically. All characters, pretty random assortment, and I just try to memorize.
Do you use that one?
Yes.
Thank you. What is your internet password that you use for your email?
In and Out 2017.
That was easy.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
My internet password is capital W @TER capital B 0 NG water bong.
Yeah, we probably could have guessed that one.
My internet password is okay?
Yeah.
Mila for what's MILR64.
Well, that's nice. Now Americans can hack into a Russian website.
Unfortunately, it was way too easy for these interviewers to get these people to tell them about their passwords. So be very suspect if somebody is asking you questions concerning, what your password is about or what your birthday is. Never answer them, because this is what can happen. If someone steals your password, they can impersonate you and commit fraud and all kinds of other crimes. They can get access to your bank account. They can purchase items online. They can impersonate you on social media and dating websites, and they can send emails that are in your name. And heaven forbid, should you have some private information on your computer, they can also get access to that. Now, passwords provide the first line of defense against unauthorized access to any of your personal information or your computer, and they're very, very important. They are the gatekeepers. The passwords are the most common way that you can prove your identity when you're using websites and email accounts or your computer. They're the proof that you are accessing the account and no one else is. I want to give you 12 tips that you can use when constructing a really safe password, things that I need you to think about, because we're all kind of like this guy.
In a perfect world, my password would be a long, unique code and have absolutely nothing to do with my pets, birthdays, partners, hometown sports teams, or whatever, but that's hard.
It is hard. It's hard to remember passwords. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of online accounts. Each one is very different, and I find myself struggling sometimes when I switch my passwords to know which of the passwords I've actually switched to. It's a mess, and I'm sure most of you feel the same way. So the first tip is to use a unique password for each of your important accounts. Your email is very important. Your banking is very important, and do not use the same password across multiple accounts. I mean, the reason is pretty obvious. If the hacker gets one password, they will try it on all of your accounts. And if in fact you've used the same password on all of your accounts, they'll be able to gain access pretty easily. Number 2 is that your password should be at least 8 characters long. Some people say 12. There's no maximum, but there seems to be a minimum. 8 to 12 characters is a good, strong password. and it should consist of lowercase, uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols, because the more you put in the password, the more complex you make it, the more difficult it's going to be for the hackers to gain access to your accounts and actually find out what your passwords are. Number 3 is never use any personal information such as your name, your age, your date of birth, child's name, pet name, favorite color, song when constructing your passwords. And you can see what happened during that interview when they were trying to get people to tell them their passwords. How many of those people used a relative's name or their date of birth? And thinking about songs.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, you're crying all the time.
Oops, I may have just shown you my favorite song. Or maybe not. Now, number 4 is to avoid consecutive keyboard combinations. This is really called QWERTY, or I don't even know how to pronounce the other one. And a QWERTY keyboard is the name of most popular keyboards. It's basically it's a way that the keyboard is arranged, and there's a whole history behind that. It's kind of interesting. But a lot of people, in order to create a password, they do something that they can type in really, really quickly, like QRETY. They're consecutive on the keyboard, and they're pretty easy to do, and you can see the other combinations. I've had friends of mine who go over to the number keyboard and go 987654321, which is also a really bad way to do it. So avoid consecutive keyboard combinations. Somebody has done that before you, and the hackers already know to test that. Number 5 is if you look around, make sure no one is watching you while you're entering your password. Now, look all the way around and look for cameras that are nearby. If somebody is looking over your shoulder, and this is called shoulder surfing, there's actually a name for it in cybersecurity, ask them politely to look away or cover it with your hand, but don't let anybody see you enter your passwords, or to extrapolate that a little bit farther, or your PIN on your credit cards. It's very important that you're aware of who's looking at you and that you're aware of your surroundings. Number 6 is make sure that you always log out or sign out of any device that you're on after you're not using it. If it's an iPad, shut it down. If it is an iPhone or an Android phone or any sort of smartphone, shut that down as well. And certainly if it's your computer, go in, log off, and shut down. That way nobody can get into your computer without knowing at least one of your passwords. Next, you need to avoid entering any passwords on computers that you don't control. If you're at a library, it's okay to do research, but don't go into your personal accounts, because you never know when somebody may have installed some malicious software whose sole purpose is to steal your password. So any public computer, go ahead, search the internet, have fun on it, get Google Maps, but don't enter any passwords that are associated with any of your accounts. Next, and number 8, is avoid entering passwords when you're connected to an unsecured Wi-Fi connection, like at a Starbucks or an airport. Public Wi-Fi networks have all kinds of dangers, and that's actually an entire topic for another webinar. But hackers can intercept your passwords and data over this unsecured connection. So once again, if you are surfing the web, that's perfectly fine, but don't enter any passwords to any of your personal accounts. Now, the next is just a slide kind of showing you how these hackers do this on these public Wi-Fi. They basically will create a Wi-Fi hotspot that looks kind of like the Wi-Fi network that you think you'll be connecting to. You can see the little man who is connecting actually to Yahoo. And what has happened is an evil hacker has gone and created their own Wi-Fi hotspot called Yandu or Yanu. I can't even read that. And it looks to somebody that is just quickly connecting and not really looking for the details. It looks like it might be legitimate, but the only thing that hacker is doing is trying to gain access to anything that is on your device, and to look at your passwords, and to look at the content on whatever device you're connected. Next, and this is really important, and I know it's difficult to do, never tell your password to anybody. Certainly never tell it to a stranger, never tell it to somebody who's calling online to ask you about a password for one of your accounts. If someone asks you in a text message, never, ever do that. The only person in my life that knows my passwords is my daughter. She's obviously a very trusted person, and should something happen to me, she'll know how to get into all of my accounts. But keep it private. Keep it to yourself. Don't be like those people in that video that basically told their passwords to anybody who happened to be watching the Jimmy Kimmel Show, which has a huge audience, I'm sure, of millions of people. The next is change your passwords regularly and avoid using the same password over and over again. It's a good idea. Some of the applications will lock you out until you change your passwords. Most of them won't. But over time, mark it in a calendar, maybe put an alert in your smartphone that says, okay, on the 15th of every month, I'm going to change my passwords. Or if you want to do it less frequently, every 3 months, I'll change my passwords, and change them to something that is dramatically different. And that's done in case somebody figures out your old password, they won't be able to get into your new accounts. It's just good cyber hygiene. Next is never write your passwords on a sticky piece of paper and hide it underneath your workstation or your telephone. Oops, there's quite a few of us that might have been guilty about that at one point in time. I'll bet some people in the audience have put their passwords on sticky notes and put them in all kinds of different places. I have this amazing 93-year-old aunt. I think I've told you about her before. And I want to always make sure that she has her passwords in one place. So she actually has a passbook diary that we keep for her. She lives alone. She doesn't have anybody else that comes into her house right now. And the diary is actually locked, and she keeps the key in only a place that she knows where it is. So it is pretty safe. So make sure that you don't write your passwords down on anything, whether it be sticky notes or pieces of paper, and leave them around anywhere near your computer or where prying eyes could see them. And finally, last is do not select remember my password when you're online. If you do this, then all of your passwords are actually housed within the computer or the device that you have. And anybody who gains access to that device can hack into the place where your passwords are kept. So I know it's convenient. I know it's so much easier for the browser to remember the passwords, but it's not a good idea as far as password safety. So be very, very careful. Now I want to give you a couple of ways that I create passwords. And the first thing that you're going to see is actually the very first Cyber Safe Seniors video that I ever created. So please bear with me. I know that the sound is not perfect, and hopefully I've gotten a little bit better as the time has gone along. And remember, this is only one suggestion. I'm going to show you another one after this, but you're going to have to find a system that works for you. Today, we're going to talk about passwords, and the reason that passwords are so important is that they protect your identity online. It's amazing to me that 73% of people use the same password on multiple sites, and about 33% of people actually use the same password on every. I bet it actually is even higher for baby boomers, because most of us worry about being able to actually find the book that we put the passwords in, but anyway, remembering the passwords. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I do to make things a lot easier. Okay, number one, I always create a password on the first of the year, January 1st, that I use for the entire year. The more different kind of things you have in it, the better. So if you can incorporate uppercase, lowercase, characters, numbers, letters in your password, it's going to be more secure. But that is really, really complex. So what I'm going to do is I will show you how to create a complex password and how I remember it in a simple fashion. I always try to incorporate the year, because for me that That's a good number that I can remember. I rarely forget what year it is, although I'm sure at some point that might happen. Anyway, so this year is 2018. So a password for me might be 2018 and then the first letters of the following. I love cyber safe seniors. And then the character @. Now that character @ is important. It can be any character you would like, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that with the first letter of whatever site I happen to go to. So for example, my password for Amazon might be 2018 I love cyber safe seniors, which is just the first letters, not the words, @A for Amazon. For my Zulily account, it might be 2018 I love cyber safe seniors @Z for Zulily. And for me, it becomes very simple to remember because I'm repeating it a number of times per day. Whatever works for you. But I find it a good way to have a unique password for every single website that I go to, as well as being moderately complex and working for me. So let me know what you figure out for you. I'm obviously not going to tell you what my passwords are. And that, by the way, that's the other thing. Don't tell your passwords to anybody by mistake. You should watch some of these what is called social engineering videos about how people get passwords out of you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you found it useful. And try to follow me on social media if you can find, well, I'm sure you can find me. I'll show you where to find me. Anyway, I look forward to doing this again. Just so you know how easy it is to socially engineer passwords out of people. And that's what they call social engineering. I'm going to link some down below and hopefully have a sense of humor because it is pretty easy to get some of these passwords out of some people, and hopefully that will never, ever be you. Also, if somebody asks you for your password on the internet, of course you are never going to give it to them. Never, ever, 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 ever give out a password for any sort of account. Okay, that's kind of hard to watch for me. Oh my goodness. It's kind of like hearing your own voice for the first time. Anyway, that is one suggestion, is to create a sentence and then just use the first letters of each word. Now, the second is coming from a well-known gentleman named Kevin Mitnick, and he happens to be the chief hacker at a company that's called KnowBe4, and KnowBe4 basically provides training materials for companies and all kinds of healthcare institutions and educational institutions that will train their employees to be more cyber safe. So listen to his suggestion because I think it's a good one.
I'm Kevin Mitnick, and I'm the Chief Hacking Officer at KnowBe4. And I always get questions surrounding password management. People always asking, how can I choose the best password so I don't end up compromised? So what do I recommend is that people get away from passwords and start using passphrases, or what I like to call pass sentences. And those passphrases should be 25 characters or more. I know what you're thinking. Wait a second. That's too long, 25 characters? How am I going to possibly remember that? Well, you know what? It's really simple. How about a simple sentence is I went to the beach today and swam in cold water, right? Something that's so easy to remember, but so hard for an attacker to crack. Now, you can make it a little bit more complex and misspell one of the words in the sentence. And by all means, you always want to use multi-factor authentication. So when you're accessing cloud-based applications or websites, any of those websites that allow you to do so, always enable multi-factor authentication.
Now, multi-factor authentication is a good topic for another webinar, but basically it is allowing you to have two things, multi-factor, two things that will help identify you, because the more you have, the more difficult it's going to be for somebody to impersonate you. Now, from what Kevin said, that is a wonderful idea, is to select a phrase. For example, you could select cyber seniors is wonderful with technology, or cyber seniors teaches me about the internet. any phrase that you can remember and then add a couple of characters and numbers, and then make sure that there is one place where you put some sort of a unique identifier for the particular site that you're on. Make it as easy as possible to remember, and by repeating the same phrase daily with a little bit of a unique ending for each site, you'll begin to remember it. Now, why are we going to all this trouble to create these unique passwords that are specific and long, and making sure that we don't click remember password and all of the other things that I told you? Well, you know, in the beginning I told you about people stealing your identity, stealing your information, stealing your money. But what you want to do really is to prevent the hackers from obtaining your password and finding out what it is.
Passwords are like apples in a fictional garden. They're perfect, ripe, and there for the taking, if you know how. Websites have a lot of different ways to store passwords: hashing, salting, tokens, two-factor authentication. We have a whole video about it. But hacking a password, that's a lot more fun, right? So first, for noobs, passwords aren't stored as words, but as a set of encrypted characters called hashes. They look like this. If you want to access your account, you don't really need your password. I just have to find the thing that lets me decrypt that hash, or at least match it. To do that, hacker communities created something called lookup tables and rainbow tables, data files of common passwords that are pre-hashed. Password 123 hashed is this. ABCDE 12345 hashed is this. If a hacker did this beforehand and has millions of passwords, they can just compare them and then get access to your account. And hackers can do this comparison really fast. In a test for Ars Technica, a computer could try 350 billion combinations every second. 350 billion password guesses every second. How common does your password feel now?
That's pretty scary when you figure out how easy it is for these hackers to actually find your passwords and be able to know exactly what they are. Now, that's just a little bit about hashing. It's a pretty complex mathematical algorithm that people use. But if you doubt what I'm saying, you can go onto YouTube and Google how to hack a password. And there are, I venture to say, hundreds of videos that will show you how to hack a password. And you don't want to be in a position where your password is easy to hack. Many seniors, in fact, 39% of them, store their passwords on a sheet of paper. And interestingly enough, most of the millennials use an online password manager. Now, on a sheet of paper, as I said before, is quite dangerous, because what's going to happen is that somebody can actually find your password and get into your computer. But a password manager, although it's a good idea, is a bit complex. What these are applications that will basically store all of your passwords, and all you have to remember is just one. But the thing to remember is that you have to pay for these monthly, so there is a cost involved. And not all password managers are created equally. Stay away from the ones that are free, and obviously the ones that cost a bit, even the more expensive ones, are a little bit better in terms of what's called their encryption. Now, this is how a password manager works.
This is an app for all your devices, phone, laptop, tablet, and any browser you use, that autofills usernames and passwords for all your online accounts. It stores your passwords and creates an easy, secure way to access all of your accounts on any device. With a manager, your 50 million passwords are all saved and securely stored in an encrypted vault, which you can search if you need to. All you have to do is remember one master password. These apps have oodles of upsides. You can change all your passwords without having to remember new ones, even for that secret Instagram account you made after a few too many beers and then didn't touch for 5 years. They also help you deal with the absolute pain of making new passwords whenever you need a new one. It doesn't help that each little dumb enter your new password box seems like it has a bizarre and sometimes contradictory set of rules for password creation. Those rules are formulated by monsters.
A password manager it's a good option if you don't mind paying for an online program and you don't have trouble accessing other programs. But if you do, Certainly, there are other ways to store your passwords. Now, some of the well-known password managers are things like KeeperSafe, LastPass, NPass. I'm not going to talk about all of them here. They're certainly easy to research these online, but no matter whatever you choose to do, the goal here is to remember your passwords and to remember them easily, and to keep them safe so that no one can impersonate you. Now, just to reiterate, we've talked about why it's important to have a complex password. You don't want somebody stealing your identity or stealing your money or getting into your social media accounts. I've given you some guidelines for creating a complex password. Remember the 12 different things that we talked about? And I'm giving you some suggestions on how to create complex and secure passwords that are easy to remember. But the bottom line is you have to create a password for you in a way that it will be easy for you to remember, hard for people to guess, in order to keep your personal information personal and away from prying eyes.
Well, the days of the single, simple password are ancient history. I'm going to change my password too. I'm an old idiot. 1, 2, 3.
And now for scams. I want to talk about the United States Census scams. And I do apologize to my Canadian friends out there. I know that you don't have a census going on right now, but when you do, I'm sure that the same problems will arise. Anytime there is a public effort to do anything, whether it be the coronavirus, and we talked about those scams at the last webinar, anytime the public is involved, the scammers ramp up because they try to trick you into giving them your personal information. Now, here is what the scammers are trying to do now.
In just a few weeks, people across the country will be asked to respond to those 2020 census questions.
And tonight, News 5 investigative reporter Patrick Nelson has a warning about ways scammers are already trying to take advantage of this process, Patrick.
There are multiple ways. Tonight, we want to tell folks about the 3 main ways crooks are going to try to steal sensitive information from you using the census as cover. First of all, when you check your mailbox, that's going to be the first place that you're going to find fraudulent packets in the mail. The crooks then hope that you'll send back information like your social security number or even banking information. Also, there's a big push to do things online, so you'll want to keep an eye out for phishing emails. Most people will be taking that census again online. Crooks will try to get you to click on those fake links as part of this process. And finally, if you don't take part in the census workers will come to your door, but unfortunately, some of them may not be who they say they are. Federal officials say actual census workers will have ID and can be verified. It appears the first sign of census scams is already showing up in some of our mailboxes. Carol, an 80-year-old Colorado Springs resident, called News 5 to share the news.
I got a letter that was urging me to send in my census immediately. Everything looks so formal and so real. I think it's very easy to fool people.
Jonathan Liebert is a 2020 census co-chair for El Paso and Teller counties. He's heard similar concerns about fraudulent census packets arriving in the mail.
And it's not going to be a 3 or 4 page, document either, which is what this was. And so, no, don't fill that out. It's 10 questions. It's quick. It's easy. And you should not be filling anything out at this point.
Liebert says the best way to protect yourself is to understand what thieves are after.
If they're asking for bank account information, don't give it. Social Security information, don't give it. Ask you political questions or political party information, don't do that. Don't make donations. I mean, some of the basic types of things.
These types of questions are red flags and are not part of the 2020 census.
The census is quick and easy. It's 10 questions. It'll take you 10 minutes or less. So there shouldn't be a lot of information on there. You can go online and look at what the questions are going to be now. So, you can be prepared for the census.
Now, I've already completed my 2020 census, so I can speak about this firsthand. It is a very easy form. There are 10 questions. It asks you nothing about your finances. It does ask you your name and your address and where you live, because basically that's the only information that they're really looking for. These are some of the things that the Census Bureau will never ask, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're contacting you by phone, by a written letter, or by a text message. Don't give them any information that they don't need. These are things they will never ask. They will never ask for your Social Security number. They don't need that. They need to know your name and where you're living. If they're asking for your Social Security number, it's probably a scam. They will never ask for your bank account or credit card numbers. That's personal information. There's nothing that you have to pay for in the census, so definitely don't give them banking account information, credit card numbers. Don't buy them a gift card. None of those things. And they will never ask for anything on behalf of a political party. Right now in the United States, we have a presidential election coming up, and there's all kinds of people out there asking for money and political affiliations, but it has nothing to do with the census. The census doesn't care if you're Democratic, Republican, Martian, Green Party, liberal. It doesn't matter where you are. All they want to know is where you live, what town you live in, and how many people are in your household. And they will also never ask you for donations. The census doesn't need donations. We are taxpayers in both Canada and the United States, and all of our taxpayer money actually goes to fund some of these census takers and some of these census jobs. So know that that is not something that they will ever ask you, and don't give them any money. Now, there is the good news about this, though. And the good news is that although there are a lot of scams now, the census scams only come around once every 10 years. So that actually is good news. And as I've said before, and I will continue to say, we are an amazing group. We have a lot of history behind us, and that makes our critical thinking skills better than any other generation. So, as I always say, when coming to cybersecurity, be cyber smart, but really be senior smart. And I hope to see all of you safely in cyberspace.